Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Megan Soroka, a former senior statistical specialist of the research division of the PSRTI. This afternoon, I will be sharing with you a study entitled Web Scraping for Price Statistics in the Philippines, which is a 2021 PSRTI in-house research with our Executive Director, Josefina V. Almeda, Professor Manuel Leonard F. Albiz, Ms. Jessa S. Lopez, and Ms. Shanita G. Pelayo as my co-authors. The presentation will start with the introduction of the paper, to be followed by the review of related literature, methodology, results, and the conclusions and recommendations of the study. As we all know, official price statistics are calculated from data taken from regularly conducted surveys of the Philippine Statistics Authority. However, the implementation of these surveys is costly. With the transition of businesses to a digital platform nowadays, price statistics can be easily collected via web scraping. What is web scraping? It is the process of collecting information from the web. As digital and online platforms become an integral part of commerce, web scraping is seen to help in increasing the frequency of data collection while reducing the cost of price surveys. So the utilization of big data from the web to aid official statistics is being implemented in various countries and is also used in economic research. These countries, flashing the screen right now, found that web scraping is an efficient tool to collect prices. Further discussion of the experiences for some of these countries will be discussed in the related literature section of this presentation. So in the Philippines, price estimation is done by the TSA and is mostly based on traditional data sources such as surveys and censuses. Because like any other official statistics office worldwide, TSA uses standard protocols in the identification of sources and collection of data so as to ensure the credibility of official statistics. Deviations from traditional data sources and methodologies invite not just statistical but even political criticisms. However, the traditional method entails high costs and infrequent conduct of data collection due to time and resource constraints. These issues may be addressed by introducing web scraping in the production of official statistics, since this method provides real-time data and is cost-efficient. Recently, online data have been used in various research by the private sector in the Philippines, such as in psychological studies, in health research, and in research on data journalism. So this led to the review conducted by the PSRTI in 2020 of the components of the Consumer Price Index, or the CPI of the Philippines, to determine which prices of goods can be collected through the web. This research aimed to look into the possibility of using web scraping and collecting data to compute official price statistics, particularly the CPI. However, it aimed to identify the components of the CPI that may be computed through data collected via web scraping. A pilot run of a web scraping process was conducted thrice a week during Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays for 1 week through an automated platform developed using the R software and designed to scrape prices on a regular interval. These crate prices consisted of prices for commodities included in the Divisions 1 and 2 of the Picoy Cup. For 2021, the PSRTI will continue the study and will aim to compute the CPI for the National Capital Region. This will be based on the online prices, or the online CPI of PSRTI, and will be compared with the official CPI for NCR computed by TSA. For the objectives of the study, first is to produce a time series of prices for Divisions 1 and 2 of the Picoy Cup that can be used in the online CPI calculation for NCR. And second is to compare the online and official CPI and determine the viability of web scraping to supplement the traditional sources of price data. So in this section of the presentation, we will discuss the definition of the CPI and web scraping, other country initiatives on web scraping online prices for the estimation of the CPI, and the comparison matrix between survey-based data collection and web scraping. So for the definition of the CPI, in the Philippines, the CPI is defined as an indicator of the change in average retail prices of a fixed basket of goods and services commonly purchased by households relative to a base year. So aside from its utilization and the estimation of the country's inflation rate and purchasing power of peso, it is also used as a basis for the adjustment of wages, pensions, and retirement benefits. Further, its components are used as deflators in the estimation of the national accounts of the Philippines or the NAP. For web scraping, it is the automated process of accessing web documents, the retrieval of predetermined information, and the transformation and storage of data gathered into a structured format. So this slide shows you the several countries who have used web scraping of online prices for the estimation of their respective CPI and have reported observations relevant to the study. So first is Ukraine. Ukraine's dataset contains about 3 million observations of online retail prices for consumer goods in their 5 largest cities. They observed that the online and official CPIs are consistent, but their subcomponents exhibit some discrepancies. They also observed that the online CPI approximates the official when the number of goods available from the web increases. Second is the United Kingdom. So the Office of National Statistics of United Kingdom developed a prototype web scraper to pilot prices for 3 online supermarket chains, namely Tesco, Sainsbury, and Waitrose. The scrapers were scheduled to collect prices for 35 items in the CPI basket every 5 a.m. And they had highlighted several issues that were also encountered for this study, such as one of the sites used blocking technologies that prevents web scraping, and one had an infinite scrolling system that cannot be replicated by the scraper that they have developed. So in Singapore, their targeted segments were transportation, home electronics and appliances, personal effects, and pharmaceutical products. Among the key learning points of Singapore's project are the consistency in product type, expertise in web programming, and legal and design restrictions on websites. They have also pointed out that there is not only a need to map web scrape data with monitored products in the CPI, but that the web scraping project also requires extensive knowledge and skills on programming and maintenance of the programs. Okay, so as seen now on the screen, presented are the notable differences between the conduct of survey-based data collection and web scraping activity based on various literatures gathered for the study. First is the methodology. So methodologies for survey-based data have long been established, while web scraping have yet to establish its own methodology. Second is the respondent burden. So a survey-based approach often comes with a lengthy questionnaire and interview time. In web scraping, availability of online data may reduce the need or conduct of surveys, thereby avoiding respondent burden. Also, survey-based approach often takes months and requires man-hours of labor, while the time lag between data collection and processing is significantly shorter when web scraping is used. With regard to the relevance of data obtained, since surveys are infrequently conducted, data obtained for these may be updated. While if web scraping is used, online data are often updated and are able to provide more recent information. However, when it comes to the approach of data collection, survey-based may have more of an advantage as one can ask desired questions to the target respondents. While in web scraping, only the available information in a website will be scraped and possible respondents cannot be probed. On the other hand, with regard to the sample size and coverage, survey-based approach usually entail limited sample sizes due to its costly conduct and implementation, while web scraping have the possibility of obtaining large samples or even full population studies, but the limitation may be observed in identifying reliable websites. So another major difference between the two approaches is the cost. Survey-based approach are known to be costly as there is a need to hire people to visit respondents physically. While in web scraping, only a small number of people are needed for the programming and maintenance of the web scraping programs. And finally is the difference between the data structure. Since surveys follow established methodologies and framework, the collected data are more structured. While in web scraping, data obtained are commonly unstructured and unfiltered. All these guided us in the web scraping activity. So now shown in the screen is the web scraping process utilized in the utilized by the research team. So the process started with the web scraping of all commodities in the identified websites. This includes the scraping of the needed information, namely the product name, the product price, and the product unit if available. The next stage is the standardization of the web scrape prices, where the prices of the commodities were converted to their price per standardized unit, like for example, per piece or per kilo. After the standardization is the consolidation of the standardized prices across all identified divisions 1 and 2 websites per subclass. And following this consolidation is the estimation of the average prices per subclass. So during these first 4 steps of the process was automated to be conducted twice a week. So that is during Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 12 noon for 5 months. After completing a month of data collection, the next step of the process would be the estimation of the monthly average price per subclass. And the succeeding steps involve the computation of the indices at each disaggregation level, namely subclass, class, group, and division level. Also, please note that as this phase of the research only focused on divisions 1 and 2 of the PICOICO, only until the index for the division level was computed for the online CPI. The 7th step of the PSA computation, or the computation of the index for all items, will also be calculated for the online CPI once all divisions have once data have been gathered for all divisions via web scraping. So with regard to the aggregation of indices, the team explored computing the online CPI using mean and median. For the mean, the monthly average price per subclass is calculated in lieu of the monthly average price per commodity. The reason for this is that the web scraping process is a more dynamic basket of goods than the survey approach, which means the commodities may vary for each data collection period. As for the median, this approach uses the median to aggregate the monthly prices of the commodities in the subclass instead of the mean. So the use of the median may reduce the effects of potential outlying prices of some commodities. We will now discuss the results of the study. So of the official CPI's market basket commodity list utilized for the identification of goods and services, which prices can be collected online, a total of 129 possible online sources of prices had been listed. However, only 53 of these websites were assessed to be feasible for programming, since the remaining may have been either dropped from the list or put on hold. Finally, since the research team focused only on the Division 1 or the Food and Non-Alcoholic Beverages Division, and Division 2 or the Alcoholic Beverages, Tobacco, and Narcotics Division, the team focused on the data gathered from the 8 grocery websites and also tobacco and alcohol websites. As discussed in the methodology earlier, the prices obtained from the grocery, tobacco, and alcohol websites from March to July went through the process of standardization. However, issues were encountered in the grocery website programs, for example, missing prices, hence the differences in the number of standardized prices per month. As discussed in the methodology, again, the research team explored the use of mean and median in the computation of the online CPI. Given that, it was found that the mean was the better option between the two, as more classes have followed almost the same movement as the PSA indices, when the computed web scraping indices were derived using the mean. Thus, for presentation purposes, the following slides will only show the results of the mean at the division level. Shown in the screen is the comparison of the PSA and web scraping indices using mean. So for the food and non-alcoholic beverages division, both the PSA index and the web scraping index may be observed to have followed an identical movement. Both indices may be seen to have decreased at first and subsequently increased. It is important to note that aside from groceries, PSA also sources price data from wet markets, which is especially relevant for food prices. This is actually one of the limitations of the web scraping approach. as most of their prices are sourced from grocery websites. Even though an online palengke was identified as one of the data sources for web scraping, this did not guarantee that the prices scraped from their website were near to that of an actual palengke. This may also be observed in the alcoholic beverages and tobacco division, as both indices generally follow the same movement. However, a considerable drop was noticed on the web scraping index for July. To ensure representativeness, the list of commodities considered in the web scraping activity depended on the Picoy COP. However, PSA focuses on obtaining the prices of specific goods included in the official market basket. This dissimilarity implies major differences in the prices obtained from web scraping compared with the PSA price index. As seen in the presented graphs, differences between the web scraping indices and the PSA indices were noted. For these, the inclusion of the web scraping indices for some of the subclasses under these two divisions is postponed, since its components need further investigation. Hence, its web scraping indices were substituted by its respective PSA indices. The following slides will show the results of the hybrid approach. Okay, so shown in the screen is the comparison between the official CPI and the web scraping indices using mean. As you can see, only two classes, that is the fish and seafood class and the food products and EC, rendered 10% absolute differences compared to the PSA indices. Okay, so with the presented discrepancies in the previous slide, the official CPI is used as a substitute to the web scraping indices of the highlighted classes, resulting to what we call the hybrid approach. So the hybrid approach follows that of the mean and is a combination of the PSA official CPI indices. This is for some of the subclasses and web scrape prices. The application of the hybrid approach is highly dependent on the results and performances of both the mean and median approaches, as to which entails more discrepancies and which subclasses have more than 10% absolute differences relative to the PSA official index. For subclasses with unexpected results and need further investigation, the PSA official CPI indices are used instead of their respective web scrape indices. In doing so, a more reliable and stable CPI may be produced vis-a-vis the official CPI. However, this also means that prices may still have to be obtained from wet markets, supermarkets, wet markets or supermarkets through key informant interviews and surveys. Nevertheless, it should be noted that this approach was mainly used as a remedy for the observed significant deviations in the short-term run, and solutions will be further explored when more data points are collected. As an ad hoc solution to address the differences in the official PSA index, as shown in the previous slides, the hybrid approach had been integrated with the methodology using the mean. Subclasses identified to have more than 10% absolute difference with the PSA official index has been substituted by the respective PSA indices to produce a more reliable and stable index. This approach postpones the use of prices through web scraping since these subclasses need further investigation. The graphs show the computed CPI using the hybrid approach, though in some groups, prices or indices computed by PSA were used. It can be seen in the graphs that the hybrid CPI closely follow the official CPI. So given the discussed results, it can be concluded that web scraping of prices is feasible for the Philippines and has the potential as a data source for CPI. However, it comes with certain issues and challenges such as varying data sources, because PSA gathers data from both supermarkets and wet markets, whereas most of the prices obtained from web scraping are from supermarkets. Also, inconsistency in the basket of goods gathered from websites. PSA focuses on obtaining price data for specific goods and services, whereas in web scraping, all commodities falling under each subclass as indicated in the PICOICOP is scraped to achieve representativeness. However, this poses risks to the data collection as the structure and contents of some websites may change over time or hinder the scraping of a consistent number of goods. With this paper used the hybrid approach and the integration of web scraping to the computation of the CPI. Through the hybrid approach, subclasses with more than 10% absolute differences relative to the PSA official index are substituted by the PSA index, while further study needs to be done to improve collected prices for some subclasses. Differences in the PSA and the web scraping indices caused by varying data sources or inconsistencies and errors in the web scrape data may be temporarily prevented through the hybrid approach. Thus, this approach is a viable option for the computation of the CPI. However, further investigation for this approach needs to be done once the team have more information. This paper also recommends a more extended data collection period to capture seasonality in the data and better evaluate the performance of web scraping to collect online prices. In addition, it is also recommended to explore other websites as some become infeasible over time. This may also be seen as a result of the pandemic, as some businesses stopped their operations due to the implemented lockdowns, thereby also causing the discontinuation of their official websites. Given the potential of web scraping found in this exercise, by computing for CPI, PSRTI will continue to pursue this research activity in order to collect more prices, explore solutions to the identified issues, and hopefully minimize the use of the hybrid approach. That is all for this presentation. Thank you for listening.